And you are reasonably prosperous, I gather? We all have our financial worries these days, of course. I know I have. He produced a mechanical sort of laugh, like an actor in a comedy that had been running too long, and Mr. Patson echoed him like another bored actor. Then Dr. Smith looked grave and pointed his pen at Mr. Patson as if he might shoot him with it. "So I think we can eliminate all that side, Mr. Patson, "Oh, yes, certainly, certainly," said Mr. Patson hurriedly, not smiling now. "Well now," said Dr. Smith, poising his pen above the paper again, "tell me what's been troubling you." Mr. Patson hesitated. "Before I tell you the whole story, can I ask you a question?" Dr. Smith frowned, as if his patient had made an improper suggestion. "If you think it might help." "Yes, I think it would," said Mr. Patson, "because I'd like to know roughly where you stand before I begin to explain." He waited a moment. "Dr. Smith, do you believe there is a kind of evil principle in the universe, a sort of super-devil that is working hard to ruin humanity and has its agents, who must really be minor devils or demons, living among us as people? Do you believe that?" "Certainly not," replied Dr. Smith without any hesitation at all. "That's merely a superstitious fancy for which there is no scientific evidence whatever. It's easy to understand, though we needn't go into all that now, why anybody, even today, suffering from emotional stress, might be possessed by such an absurd belief, but of course it's mere fantasy, entirely subjective in origin. And the notion that this evil principle could have its agents among us might be very dangerous indeed. It could produce very serious antisocial effects. You realize that, Mr. Patson?" "Oh, yes, I do. I mean, at certain times when I've been able to look at it as you're looking at it, Doctor. But most times I can't, and that, I suppose," Mr. Patson added with a wan smile, "is why I'm here." Then Mum, for once, was glad George Fleming was such a brassy sort of chap. "Here, we've had the funeral once, we don't want it again," cried George. "He's gone, and that's that, and I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry. He never liked me, and I never liked him. If you ask me, he looked like a pain in the neck, and he was one." "Every time, George," young Steve shouted. "I couldn't agree more," cried Joyce, who picked up a lot of fancy talk at work, even if she didn't pick up much money there. "Let me finish," said George, frowning at the young Grigsons, for whom he was more than a match. "You've got this £150, Ma, and you don't know what to do with it, right? Well, I got an idea, something we could all enjoy." This was more like it. Mum gave him an encouraging smile. "And what would that be, George?" Cobthorne began fastening his dispatch case. Then he stood up. The other man was standing too, and now their eyes met on this new level, at a much closer range. Cobthorne did not propose to be outstared. He was used to handling all sorts of men. But he found himself blinking. There was something curiously luminous about this fellow's stare. The carriage was darker, of course, for now Leadington's grimy station was closing round them. "These 6 people I hope to talk to," the man was saying, "are, at least, struggling to be alive." "So are the 2,000 or 3,000 I shall talk to," Cobthorne heard himself saying. "I am afraid not," said the other quite calmly. "Most people in Leadington, like most people elsewhere, are either asleep or dead." Cobthorne had meant to turn away, to reach for his bag, but this pronouncement was really too much. "That seems to me a most stupid and arrogant statement," he cried angrily, and then tried to turn away, but found that he couldn't. "Very well," came the voice, as if remotely from behind the stair that was now a luminous haze. "You will see."